Well, welcome, and on behalf of SRA Information Technology, we welcome you to the Insight Dashboard webinar. My name is Michelle Kyle, and I am the Envirosys Business Development Manager North America. I'm your host today as well. So Insight Dashboard, or ID as we're calling it, is SRA's latest innovation in environmental data management. Its purpose is to sit atop of your Envirosys implementation and provide insight into what lies within. We're excited to give you a look at the newest business decision-making tool, but first we have a little bit of housekeeping to do. This is a short 30-minute webinar, so we'll be going at a pretty brisk pace. However, we do want it to be somewhat interactive, so we'll be pausing during the product demonstration for just a few questions regarding the product that you're seeing and its functionality. As you guys may know, SRA develops products based on client needs, so getting your feedback is very important to us. And please note that due to our time constraints, you all will be muted during the session. We will, however, provide the answers to a number of frequently asked questions towards the end of the session. And if you have a question you'd like to submit, we encourage you to use the question functionality in the webinar control panel that you'll find on your right to submit that question. We plan to document these questions and answers and send them out to all registrants within the next few days. In addition, the demo itself will be recorded and the slide deck distributed, so don't worry if you miss some notes. You'll be receiving that documentation in the next few days. Now I'd like to introduce Stu Vandewater, SRA's new product manager, environmental. Stu was instrumental in the research and development of this product, so we felt there was no one better to walk us through the Insight Dashboard and show us all of its business benefits. So Stu, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thanks, Michelle. Our objective with this product simply is insight, which can be defined as the capacity to gain an accurate and deep understanding of something. So adding ID to your Envirosys implementation will give you an unparalleled understanding of what we are capturing in Envirosys is good, bad or ugly, so we can do something about issues that occur in a timely manner. ID does not introduce any new concepts which need to be configured in Envirosys. It simply provides insight into existing rules you've already defined in an efficient and streamlined way. The driving concept behind ID is the information finds you, not the other way around. Those familiar with Envirosys will know that even though there are many features which allow us to interrogate and report upon our data, they are all instigated by the user. ID does the hard work for you and presents its findings in a clean, simple dashboard. ID complements Envirosys and highlights that managing environmental data is not just about storing data for reporting later. It's about real-time assessment of rules and guidelines to mitigate risk, both in an operational and community sense. We also wanted to maximise the accessibility of such insight. ID is a contemporary, visual, simple, and available on all modern browsers and devices, so you can get your insight on the move. We have embraced business intelligence style visualisation to aid in the immediate understanding of the data and integrated GIS and geolocation to give the user a spatial context. So let's have a look at ID. This demo is being run from a cloud platform hosted by Amazon Web Services, and the data we'll be looking at is actual production real-time dust data. First thing to notice when we are about to log into ID is that ID uses the same security model as Envirosys, so data security is also observed, so site and program security is applied in all features of ID. We're going to select Port Hedland, which is where our dust data is coming from. As you can see, ID looks quite different to Envirosys. Our guiding concept is clearly evident with a lot of information finding us. During this demo, we'll explore what these numbers mean, so you'll understand why, at a glance, this dashboard lets you know if everything is okay or if anything needs immediate attention. So I'll take you through the dashboard. The dashboard is made up of 4 main panels. The first panel on the left is Data Profile, which is an assessment of data compliance and data set completeness, which is used to highlight potential issues with the conditions being monitored or with the data collection processes. Second, the news feed, an inbox style display showing individual compliance and completeness alerts requiring your attention. Third, the data feed, an inbox style display showing if you have any new data entry forms that have been submitted or new data files that have been processed. And lastly, on the right, real-time, an up-to-date summary of the health of your real-time monitoring network, showing if any alerts are currently evident and if any stations in your real-time monitoring network are out of date. So let's start by drilling a little bit deeper into the data profile. By default, we are shown the current month's assessment. So you can see here we're looking at June, but we're only seeing about 4,500 samples. So if I flick back to May, you can see that I'm looking at now 30,000 samples and the assessment of that. So it's really that quite quick as well. Shown are the different monitoring aspects for Port Hedland and their compliance and completeness. This list is sorted with the aspects requiring most attention at the top. So you can see here that air quality dust has the largest issues, both in terms of compliance and completeness. Clicking on the aspect shows more summary information about the aspect, as well as the filtering the indicators in the other three panels. And you can see in the header that it's also filtered and observed the aspect I clicked on. So I'll go back to looking at all aspects. Now, to find out more information, let's drill in on where and what issues are occurring for Port Hedland. Clicking on the data profile shows us where the issues are occurring, with a list of sample points on the left sorted by their compliance level. This is shown atop a map where each sample represented as a bubble, colour-coded according to its compliance. As you can see, the background map is currently a Google satellite. We can change that. Let's have a look at the road map so our bubbles are a little bit more evident. You can see here I can keep zooming in to find out where issues are occurring. To see why we have compliance issues at a location, we simply click on the location to pop up further analysis. Now we can see what results are causing issues at the location. Here we can see that the PM10 result is causing the low compliance rate. Clicking on all items allows us to see all data which is collected at that location and the other parameters, and we can see here that the other parameters are compliant. To work out when these non-compliances are occurring, we click on the PM10. We can now see a graph of the parameter over time and where it is outside the guideline. We're also presented with a statistics table describing the data. We can also see this in tabular format by clicking on the table icon. We have an array of options for this graph, including the ability to change the summary period for the parameter and what summaries are shown on the graph. So in this example, I'm now going to have a daily summary of the PM10 data, both with an average, a min, a max, and a count. We can then download the graph, which is obviously very handy if we want to include it in a report or email it to somebody to outline what's been going on in the field. Now, what I can do now is I can go back to my pop-up summary and have a look at the completeness panel. So what this is showing me is presenting all the data sets which have been assessed over the month, and I can clearly see where I am missing data. If I scroll down to the bottom, I can see where I've actually had all the data that I expected. So this is a very handy way to work out when potential issues with data collection processes may have broken down. And obviously the whole idea of ID is that it is a tool which we can use all the time, that once we started to have issues with our data flow, we would have identified those and corrected them. Now, if we want to see all of the locations and see a little bit more information about that, I can simply click on the expand icon and we're presented with a larger table which shows all of the counts for both our compliance and completeness. Okay, next we're going to look at real time. Now I can do this in a couple of ways. I could go back to the dashboard by clicking on the ID logo in the top left, or I can click on the real time icon down the bottom right. The data profile showed us a summary of compliance and completeness for a location for a period. Real-time differs by showing us the current values which are being observed in the field and if any issues require our attention. On the left we have a list of sample points with a thin strip to the left of the name indicating how current the data is. Orange or red indicates the station is either becoming out of date or is out of date, and green means we have current data. We can also see if a guideline exceedance is currently being observed by the background colour of the result, which also reports if the result is moving up or down. The map shows us the location of the stations. We can filter this map by clicking on the filter to isolate a particular issue of interest. So for example, if I just want to see alerts, then I simply click on the filter and it only shows me alerts which are happening in the field. The thing about ID is that it will remember these settings as well, so next time I come in, you'll only be looking at alerts. So to get more information about a particular station, I simply click on the station. We're presented with data about the primary reading for the station, in this case PM10, including any relevant non-compliance information. So I can see here the colour coding, and I can see that the alert was PM10 dust and what the condition was, greater than 70. I'm also presented with some simple statistics about that aspect over the time period I'm looking at, so currently for the last 2 days. And I can see a graph which is showing us that the PM10 is clearly above the limit of 70. I can change my time scale out to 7 days of real-time data, so that assists me with looking at any trends. I can also view the data of any of the other parameters which have been collected over time as well. So what I'll do now is I'll go back to the dashboard and we'll have a look at the newsfeed. So the newsfeed shows us notifications about our compliance and completeness issues. So as we went through the data profile, we saw that there were a number of issues at stations. As they have been processed by Envirosys, it would have been raising alerts, and so these alerts are presented to us in an inbox style display with the newsfeed. So to view the newsfeed, I simply click on the newsfeed panel and I'm presented with my inbox style display. So you can see here on the left there's a list of all the alerts and notifications. To view more information about that, I simply click on the alert. Now what you're presented with is all the information about that exceedance and the actual guideline and sample that it is part of. So with Envirosys at the moment, you may have received an email about this non-compliance. It has limited information in it, and to then find more information about it, you'll need to go into the system. So ID does a lot of that heavy lifting for you and shows you all the information you'll need to know about this, including when the reading was taken, when it came into the system, where it was, what guideline it exceeded. It shows you audit details, so you can see here that it was loaded by the real-time engine, any metadata that exists for it, the rest of the results for that sample, and also gives us a history, the next and previous and next results, so I can notice any trends that may be occurring. As I clicked the alert, you can see on the left it actually marked it as red, so it really is like an inbox. So using ID all the time means that you'll be able to keep up to date with all the issues that may be occurring in the field. Now what we can also do is see data sets. So just like our compliance notifications, our completeness notifications appear on the left as well. And so we can see that the top one here, we've only had 86% of our data. So clicking on that just gives us a real simple display showing us that we expected 144 samples, we got 125, and that it was less than our tolerance of 100%. So it'll also let you know that how many duplicate samples were loaded and how many invalid samples. So once again, it's a prompt for us to perform an action to remedy the situation. So that's the news feed. Now we'll have a look at the data feed. So I can see here that the data feed is showing us how many new data entry forms have been received, and we've got 1 waiting there, and how many data loads have been processed, so I've got 15 waiting there. So clicking on the forms shows us what data was entered, including if any of the results were in non-compliance. So I can see here that 1 out of 6, I've got 1 sample with 6 results, so if I click on that, I get to have a look at the information. So as I mentioned before, I can see that 1 of those is actually a non-compliance. So once again, I can click on that data and I can see that it indeed failed my guideline, and like we saw in the previous screen, I'm now presented with that same sort of information about my results, so I can go through and see what happened. I can see here in the audit that originally it was entered via data entry form, and then it was corrected because of a data error. So next one I can have a look at is data loads. So you can see here this really is a really good way to get a bead on the information that's flowing into your system. So we saw data entry forms before, now we're looking at data loads. That's loaded 48 samples and about 400 results pretty much instantaneously. So this is the sort of the speed that we're trying to achieve with ID as well. You can see here there's a lot more data than we saw in the data entry form. It also tells us that we're 100% compliant with regards to the data that's being loaded. And once again, if I want to know anything more about this information, I can simply click on the result. The other thing I can do here, and which is what I can do also with data entry forms, is download the data set. So if I actually wanted to take this data load away with me and do some more analysis on it outside of the system, then I can download that into an Excel spreadsheet. So that's all for the interactive portion of the demo. Going back to the presentation now, the other thing we wanted to show you is what we call real-time mobile. So part of the ID product suite is also a software application that runs on your mobile phones, a smartphone optimized display of the real-time feature available in what we've seen in ID and also in viruses. So now you can have access to the current field conditions anywhere, anytime in the palm of your hand, which we think is a really powerful tool. So that's it for ID. I'll now hand back control to Michelle, who will take us through the remainder of the webinar.
Great, thank you, Stu. Appreciate your time and your effort on this this product. You've done a great job with it. We're now coming to the interactive part in which we would like some feedback from you guys. So we're about to ask you 3 poll questions which you can answer via the GoToWebinar interface. We'll have each question open for about 15 seconds before we then share the results with you immediately. So here comes the first question. What is the top reason you would use ID or Insight Dashboard? Would it be for mobility, accessibility from anywhere and from almost any device, to better monitor all aspects of my data to ensure compliance, or less clicks to find the information I need to do my job? So we're going to let you guys use the interactive display there to answer the question. And we'll wait a few seconds and see if we get our results back. This is our little trick to make sure you guys are paying attention. Okay, the top reason you would use ID, no one said mobility. 33% of you said to better monitor all aspects of your data, and 67% said less clicks to find the information I need to do my job. Very nice. All right, next question coming up. On which devices would you predominantly use ID, Insight Dashboard, and you can select multiple answers here. Would you typically use it or most use it on your desktop or laptop in the office, on your tablet or your laptop on the go, or an iPad, or on your phone? So again, we'll give you a few seconds or so to answer those questions. All right, laptop or desktop in the office was clearly a front runner. Tablet and ID. Wow, that's interesting because it looks like we have a 133% reporting. All right, great input for us. We'll go to the last question here. All right, how often would you access Insight Dashboard? Just select one here. Would you envision yourself doing it multiple times a day? Would you see yourself accessing Insight Dashboard daily, weekly, or only monthly, or even less than that? We can see folks clicking away. All right, no one thought they'd use it multiple times a day. 33% of you will split right down the thirds here, daily, weekly, or monthly or less. And I guess that would clearly depend on what your role is in the organization and how much you would need access to that data. So we thank you guys for your feedback. As I mentioned earlier, SRA develops products based on client feedback and client interaction. So we truly do take your input very seriously. So thank you for that. We have come up with some common questions about the Insight Dashboard, and this slide that you're seeing on screen shows you that. One of the most frequent ones would be, when can I have ID? So Stu, I'm going to pose that to you. When can people have the Insight Dashboard?
Well, the ID is actually available now. So if you, but the only caveat is that you need a certain version of Envirosys, which is 6.7. So a lot of our clients are not on 6.7 yet, but if you are interested in ID, then we'd need to put you on upgrade path to 6.7, but it is available now and has been implemented by several of our clients already.
Fantastic. Another question we get asked a lot is, how much does it cost to implement ID?
Yep. Be careful not to lead with that's $1 million question, because obviously it's not that much. The cost of ID always depends on your Envirosys license type. So if you're only a single site license, then it is cheaper than buying one if you're a corporate license. But I suppose the take-home message there, it is a separately licensed product. But we think with the benefits you get out of it, that it definitely is worth the investment. But I suppose the other caveat to that is that it costs practically nothing to implement because it works with your existing implementation. So if you chose to upgrade to ID, it'd be simply paying the one-off license fee. And then effectively we do the upgrade, we turn it on, and there's no other implementation or configuration that needs to occur.
Which is really handy, in that a lot of people, when they were used to implementing Envirosys, it was a fairly large project, but this is very different. This is pretty much just a flip of the switch, right? Yeah,
correct, Michelle, and that's exactly what we wanted to do, that it's really about trying to unlock some of those rules and some of that assessment out of Envirosys, which you can get to, but we're trying to make that a lot easier for our clients.
Right. Now, we do have questions often about browsers that are supported by ID, so what could we expect there?
Yeah, so one of the things with ID is it really is about mobility, and that doesn't necessarily mean just having it on your smartphone, but it also means being able to use it across different browsers. As people be familiar with Envirosys, that it is just for Internet Explorer, but ID is a very modern sort of application that'll work across Google Chrome, Firefox, obviously Internet Explorer and Apple. So going across Apple also means that you'll be able to use it on your Mac, as well as iPad and phone for real-time mobile.
That's great. And the mobile is something that you touched on there at the end of the product
Yep.
demonstration. So this is nice about ID, that it can go with you, right? And which is one of the reasons for the design, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you hit ID on a tablet, so an iPad or say a Galaxy Tab, then you'll see exactly the same experiences that I just showed you in the demo. And indeed, a lot of the development for ID was designed around the specifications for a tablet. Smartphones is definitely somewhere that we're heading as well. Real-time mobile is our first part of ID that goes onto there. But as SRA produces more tools, not only around Envirosys but other applications, then mobility is a big part of our strategy moving forward.
Great. Well, those are some of the commonly asked questions. As I mentioned during the introduction, we're keen to answer all the questions you might have as well. And we've seen some come across here. Due to time, we won't be able to do so within this short webinar. We have, however, collected all the questions you've raised during the session, and we'll respond to them in our follow-up correspondence. We've also performed a couple of these sessions in different time regions or different regions of the world. So we will be compiling all of those questions from the various regions. So you'll be getting those hopefully within the next few days or so. Well, thanks for taking the time to check out this introduction to Insight Dashboard. So if you don't want to have to run reports and queries in Envirosys to find the information you need, you want the information in Envirosys to find you. That's one reason why you would use Insight Dashboard. If you want to be kept informed on what could currently be an issue in your monitoring framework, especially when you're on the move, Insight Dashboard is a product that will really be valuable for you. And if you want an easy and efficient way to assess the performance of the rules that you've already defined in Envirosys, Insight Dashboard helps you do that. So if ID is of interest to you, please don't hesitate to contact myself or your designated account manager for a more in-depth discussion and possibly another demo to open it up to the rest of your staff so that they can see it. Last but not least, you'll be prompted at the end of this webinar as you're exiting, you'll be prompted to answer a very short 4-question survey when we end the session, and we would greatly appreciate it if you could answer them for us. So again, we thank you for your time. Thanks for registering it, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.